Good morning, Wrestling Inc. Get up, get going. Happy Monday. It is time to get the week going right. It is me, your managing editor for WrestlingInc.com, Nick Hausman, joined here as I am every Monday by our very good friend, Michael Wiseman. Michael, welcome back to the Wrestling Inc. Daily.
Got to get my directions down pat here. If you are watching on the video stream, I'm pointing off camera to Nick, who is actually on my right-hand side, not my left-hand side like on my screen. So happy Monday, Nick. I'm happy to be here.
Yes, we got a big show here today, everybody. It has been obviously a huge week or so in the world of professional wrestling and news, and we have somebody here today that knows all about it. Cassidy Haynes, the owner of BodySlam.net, the guy who broke the news about all the Daniel Bryan AEW signing stuff. I actually have had the chance to spend some time with Cassidy. Raj thought it would be very interesting to maybe get him on the air since he's never broken big news like this before. So you're going to get to hear me and Cassidy talk all things Daniel Bryan AEW here later on in the show if you're listening in audio form. Now, if you're watching us right now live in video form, hi. At 1 p.m. Eastern, we're going to debut that conversation with Cassidy over on the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel, so you can check it out there as well. Big thanks to Cassidy for taking the time this morning. I know he has really not slept a whole lot recently, so very appreciative of that. And at the end of the show, we're going to table the Daniel Bryan talk till the mailbag. We'll look at all the news around Daniel Bryan, kind of a rehash. There was some new breaking news that came out just this morning from Cassidy. So you're going to hear about it in the interview segment. So I figured we'd just save it all for the mailbag. Who do you want to see Daniel Bryan feud with in AEW? And we will do a deep dive. Really, the back half of the show between Cassidy and the mailbag is going to be all Daniel Bryan AEW talk. So stick around for that. But hey, Michael, before news we can use and that will probably leave a bruise, we got good news here. We're going to start the show by sending congratulations to AEW star Nick Comoroto. He proposed to his girlfriend, Becky, a.k.a. Ref Becky, this past weekend at an indie show. Love is in the air. Congratulations to this giant mountain of a man, Nick Comoroto.
It's always so sweet to see true love happening. It's a summer of love. Now, I do worry a little bit now. Proposing to a referee feels a little bit disingenuous. Like, sure. I don't know. Can you really trust the referee to be impartial at that point? But, it's love, so we'll give him a pass. Why not?
You know what? There's got to be a good indie out there that can book that angle, right? This is his lady Nick Patrick,
That's it. That's it. Man, this is some good stuff. No, congratulations. True love, right? Don't forget about the 50% of marriages in a divorce. Y'all will be on the other 50%. Positive wow. Thinking.
Why do you even bring that up, man? It's like we did. Okay. All right.
I'm a realist. I'm just saying they're going to be on the good half of that, not the bad half.
All right. Wonderful. Well, hey, it is a summer of love here. And you guys can join our little drum circle we call the Daily. I didn't mention the comment section is open. We are live. Daniel Price here saying summer of love. This ain't the 60s, but man, maybe we can act like it is, right? So anyway.
Daniel's going to be in that other 50% that I'm not supposed to talk about on the podcast. So sorry, Daniel.
Join Phil. Join Danny Cochran. Morning, guys. Hello. The comment section is open. We'll throw your comments up over on the screen as the show goes along and engage you guys as we go. But hey, news you can use. News that'll leave a bruise. News that'll leave blood all over your ring. I think outside of everything going on with Daniel Bryan and CM Punk, the man who stole the weekend easily, Matt Cardona, defeating Nick Gage, pinning him in a death match to win the GCW World Championship. I'm sure you've seen the gifs of Cardona being pelted by a variety of things, including, I believe, at least one fan threw a pizza cutter at Matt Cardona. There you go. Ain't your father's pro wrestling. What do you think about Cardona's win here, Michael?
It's a freaking big deal. I love the angle. I love what Cardona has been doing. Actually, he's been doing the rounds on the indies. He came to a local show here in Winston not too long ago, so it was really cool. But I like how he is now reinventing himself to kind of do something different. People expect him to be that WWE true. He was always a good guy, the woo, woo, woo. You kind of like that guy you just, oh yeah, he's likable. And I like the fact that he's like, nah, F that. I'm going to go out here and do a freaking death match with the king of death matches right now, a hot guy in Nick Gage, right? This guy is all over the place. And I love the fact that he leaned in. It's bloody, it's brutal. I think the angle is great. I know it is. There's some dissension out there in the Twitterverse and in the dirt sheets, and people have their opinions. But I thought it was a great angle, and Matt is doing a great job of reinventing himself right now.
Yeah, man. I think, look, right place, right time, right everything. They had built this up. There had been so much attention put on it. I don't think there'd ever been a GCW match that had this level of attention on it. And that includes a lot of the main events for Joey Janela's Spring Break and some big stuff that they've done at Bloodsport. This particular match felt very different and big. And look, if Cardona lost here, you roll on, you try to find somebody else for Nick Gage to wrestle, I guess, right? But in this moment here, for Matt Cardona to win this title, I mean, you could feel and hear that reaction when those fans just completely lose their minds. Really, really special. And he has not stopped. He is tweeting. He is rubbing it in their faces. He is teasing. He's going to put Velcro on the belt. I mean, I don't know where this. I don't know that Cardona is built or wants to do a bunch of death matches. I'm interested to see where he goes from here.
But you know what's interesting, Nick? We talk all about the work that was done by the Young Bucks and Cody Rhodes and bringing us to AEW and how we are today with Twitter and social media and all that stuff. Zack Ryder, Matt Cardona did that shit first, right? He did it back in 2011, whenever he was the internet champion and he was the first one out there on YouTube doing his thing. And so what I love is that he is still using that same platform to completely reinvent himself. I think you're right. This is one of those big buzzy moments for him. And I think the deathmatch scene is not his scene by and large, but he was the kind of star. Nick Gage is huge right now. He was the kind of star that elevated this because of his brand recognition from WWE, but also because of the work that he was doing to go out there and be the exact opposite of that. So I love it. And I think it's going to mean bigger things. We saw him show up in Impact. We saw him show up in AEW. What's his deal? What's he going to do? He's going to go out there and do something different now because he's done the same thing for 10 years. And I think it's a perfect fit for Matt effing Cardona, as he now calls himself.
Well, and Rob Humphrey here saying had to take the title off Gage before he loses to Jericho on TV. And as compelled as I am by everything going on with Matt Cardona for everything that we've been talking about, I'm equally kind of intrigued to see what's going to happen with Nick Gage here. This is their Hogan, right? I mean, this guy is not this is not somebody who loses all that often. Did the honors here to Cardona at the right time, but he's also now on AEW TV and he's got this big match with Jericho. I don't know what it does to Nick Gage if he loses to no DQ matches in a week, if at all, if it does anything,
Yeah, I don't know if he loses though. I mean, it's Jericho, so of course everybody feels like he's going to lose, but maybe Nick Gage comes out and wins and gets one back for him, right? It's hard to say. It depends on AEW and how they want to use that booking. I think the bigger thing for me is you look at the reaction to Nick Gage and what he's been able, we talk about Cardona, right? To your point, but what Gage has been able to build for himself around this mistake, he has a mystique right now that is hard to come by in pro wrestling. And I just think it elevates. GCW is a bigger deal because of the work he's done there, right? AEW, that match is a bigger deal. Chris Jericho, yes, but it's Chris Jericho versus Nick Gage. It's not just a Chris Jericho match. So he has opened up a ton of doors for himself. And I think a ton of doors beyond the death matches that he's been doing in the past little bit for himself.
Yeah, and we have Peter Patron here saying, I was at that match, one of the best wrestling experiences I've ever had. And Peter, if you don't mind jumping in and letting us know, did you feel endangered? Because it's, look, I don't want to go full Meltzer. I think we all saw the tweet. GCW made a shirt about it where he's like, this is barbaric and an embarrassment to wrestling, whatever. Don't really agree with that. But I do think there should be a line where it's like, hey, don't throw pizza cutters at other human beings. That's an attempted murder right there. I think that does cross the line. I think we saw a couple people. Yeah, here we go. Phil said throwing a pizza cutter. That's disgusting. Yeah, don't do that. We had Hops88 here. Oh, wait, where is it? Super chat. I'm not a big deathmatch guy, but the story had me, and the story still has me, right? Yeah.
You spun these two out. I mean, I think it was an upset, right? To a lot of fans, it was an upset Saturday night. And I think it's put a bigger spotlight on both of these, a bigger spotlight on Gage going into this match Wednesday night on AEW. So it's cool how the indies are kind of playing into the big shows during the week. And you're kind of building this ongoing story for all these wrestlers, but also for Cardona. What does he do next? Where does he show up? He's out there teasing the fans. They're going to tune in to whichever promotion. Is it GCW? Is it somewhere else that he shows up to next? So it's just an exciting time to be a pro wrestling fan in the way that all of these characters are overlapping indies. Forbidden Door, whatever, talk about that all you want to. The independent scene in America right now is what is making this as cool as shit as it is.
Yeah, no, for sure. And Phil here saying you're acting like GCW is a huge company. There were like 75 people there. There were a lot more than 75 people there. I don't know the exact number, but that building had a lot of human beings in it. And I think it is undeniable that GCW, I don't think GCW is an indie anymore. I feel uncomfortable referring to GCW as an indie because they run internationally. They have passionate fans everywhere. They're producing stars. They're not going out there and just taking hot wrestler A, hot wrestler B, have a match for 20 minutes, go to the back, mix, rinse, and repeat. These matches mean something. They've created a universe. They have characters now. That is no longer an indie, in my opinion. GCW is now a promotion, full on, full stop, right?
Well, I mean, whatever the number is, y'all, for real, like the ECW arena held a couple of thousand tops, right? Like ECW is one of the most historic wrestling brands of all time, and it was not selling out arenas of 100,000 people. So an angle can still be big, even with a smaller audience. But to your point, Nick, these characters, these stories, they're overlapping with TV shows now. They're overlapping. We talk about the Marvel Universe and how they're doing their own thing on Disney Plus, and we've got Loki and we've got WandaVision, and you go back to the theaters every week, right? That's kind of the way I see this. GCW, these offshoots that show up on Fight TV or whatever, maybe they're like the TV shows of the world, and you can subscribe to those, and then you show up to the big events like AEW or whatever to see how those characters come into play on the bigger stage like a theater.
Yeah. Well, Dave Langer here saying, and on that note, Cardona costing Gage the match with Jericho could be the best way to go. Remember, MJF said just said no one in the IC can help him. Nobody in the inner circle can help him. So maybe Matt Cardona comes down, tries to get some more in on Nick Gage. That actually, I don't hate that if they go that way. Yeah.
That's what's exciting, because now if you have a local, again, I mentioned that Matt Cardona came to a show in Winston-Salem not too long ago, right? And the thought was he's got this thing going on with Gage. Gage is showing up to places. Could he show up here? Fans are going to tune in for these wrestlers at their local events because they're thinking that the angle might continue. The internet allows that story to keep going no matter where these wrestlers are. They're the same person week in, week out, and it's awesome.
Yeah. We're going to shift here a little bit to WWE talk before we get into some AEW talk, and then a bunch of Daniel Bryan talk here at the back part of the show. Roman Reigns on Smackdown declined John Cena's challenge for SummerSlam, although he did accept a challenge from Finn Balor to close the show. How do you feel about how the puzzle pieces are moving over on SmackDown's main event picture?
You know, we got John Cena back last Sunday. We saw him on Monday night, came back out on Friday night and cut that typical John Cena promo, and I felt myself starting to not... The shine was worn off by Friday, right? And I saw that opening promo and I said, okay, well, this is a very straightforward story. So I like the wrinkle of Roman Reigns saying no. And I especially like that we're platforming Finn Balor, who should be a big freaking deal. He's the first ever Universal Champion, right? I like the fact that we're using him to draw this story out, to do something unexpected. It makes him feel like a bigger star by coming out there to challenge Roman Reigns. And it leaves me as a fan being like, well, shit, I guess I got to watch next week, because what's going to happen? Is John Cena going to have to come out there and earn his spot? Do we get John Cena versus Finn Balor, which could be a really good match because Balor gets great work from his opponents? I don't know, but I guess we're going to find out. That's good storytelling, and SmackDown's been good at adding those wrinkles in layers time after time.
And man, I am excited to see more Paul Heyman, John Cena interactions. The do that Paul Heyman did mocking John Cena was really well done.
Yes.
I'm intrigued to see how creative Paul can get with this one. And John too. You know, I love John Cena taunting the crowd into being like, are you team Cena or are you team Roman? And to just kind of, I think maybe just kind of getting a pulse on where this thing's got to go by going out there and doing stuff like that. So
I think the reaction to John Cena has been, you know, thank goodness for WWE's sake, has been very positive, and the fans seem very behind him. I think if he does too much of what he did this past week, we're going to start getting the boos again, right? And I think that's the concern you run into, is there's so much time. I mean, it's not April, but it's August 23rd is SummerSlam.
Right.
So we got, 4 or 5 weeks. If we just came out here and built Roman Reigns versus John Cena for 4 weeks, and every week it's just them cutting promos, that's going to get a little stale to the fans. They're going to know what to expect. But we add this wrinkle in. It's John Cena versus Paul Heyman in the meantime. I think that allows the fans to kind of keep these two separate. So whenever they come to blows or come to word blows, right, it feels that much more meaningful. But Roman was on his game too. Listen, John Cena brings out the best in Roman Reigns, and his promo Friday night turning down John Cena was a great one. Another evolution for that authority figure character of Roman Reigns as the head of the table.
And it's gonna bug the shit out of me if John Cena keeps going back to Raw and like Bobby Lashley never does anything about it. It's just so weird to me.
Sure.
Even John Cena kind of came out and was like, "Yeah, I showed up at Money in the Bank. I confronted Reigns. I was contractually obligated to show up on Raw, and now I'm here, and we're gonna keep things rolling."
And to your point, I think you said this on Twitter, Nick. Lashley didn't come out and object to the fact that John Cena didn't like. It's Lashley's show, right? He should be pissed off about it.
Yes, he should.
But this is the thing about it. The way you handled Friday night, Roman Reigns, John Cena were not in the ring at the same time. So that build is still happening. We're still anticipating that confrontation one-on-one. Finn Balor is the wrinkle in there. You run the risk of overexposing John Cena, or especially overexposing your big main event for SummerSlam if you get them too close together. I'm hoping what we get is a series of like maybe a match between John Cena and Finn Balor in the meantime, a competition one-on-one, something like that delays the inevitable contract signing, whatever we want, because that's what we're all waiting for is John Cena, Roman Reigns, that stare down, that promo, that little bit of teeth and edge. And if we can push that to about August 14th, then I think we're telling the story the right way.
Also coming out of SmackDown, Adam Pearce, he tweeted a photo of himself alongside a sad-looking Baron Corbin. He revealed that Corbin had asked him for money. This is a reference to Corbin's SmackDown storyline where he's, quote, lost everything. Of course, on SmackDown, Kevin Owens gave him what looked to be a handful of $20 bills before Corbin had got shot in the balls by Shotzi's tank, and then the Dirty Dog stole his money. I mean, am I wrong? But I love this. Like, I think this is one of the best things on SmackDown right now.
It's perfect for his character because you've been able to tell the story. Like, you have the images of him of like devolving from like king to rags, right? From riches to rags. And I think he's just owning it. Like, say what you will about Baron Corbin. I know he has his detractors out there, but this is the perfect storyline for somebody of his skill set because he can go out there and he can, oh man, he puts his hand down and he's just, I don't know what to do. He plays that kind of like annoying, woe is me character, a little bit of that BoJack Horseman in my mind, if you watch that show so well. And fans hate him more for it. Like, shut up. You had it. I love before I made all this money and I spent all this money week in week and I just thought I would have it forever and ever. And it just makes you hate him that much more. So, and it's something different too. We don't see a lot of heels that end up down on their luck in this kind of dramatic way. So it's something interesting. I don't know how you pay this off with a match or with a storyline, but you have options now. And that's what you always want as a storyteller, is options for things to do with these characters.
Hey, Praddock here saying, and I think maybe a couple of us get on the same path here. Praddock saying Corbin needs to go back down to NXT, and Dina Garofalo saying, I would love for WWE to somehow have LA Knight lose the $1 million title to Baron Corbin for rags to riches. I don't know if Corbin takes the title or not, but Corbin going down to NXT to be like, hey, I heard you guys have some money. I need money, like whatever it may be. I also, man, that would be a lot of fun on a lot of levels. I'd be about it. Why not?
This is the thing about it. We're talking about Nick Gage, Matt Cardona, and how the storytelling on other shows adds to the bigger events like AEW every week and Wednesday night and Chris Jericho, whatever else, right? I wish WWE did a little bit more of stuff like that. I think that's a great continuity, right? You bring Corbin down, he's got to do the $1 million challenge, or I'll do anything for $1, right? And it includes maybe fighting for that title. And then you bring it back up. You keep the story going and it makes the character more complex, more interesting. I think WWE views that divide too cleanly for them to do that, but that's where the story could go. And I think fans would really get behind it. And it makes NXT feel like a bigger deal, if you will.
Well, looking over at Raw here, interesting story coming out. Jeff Hardy scheduled to do a meet and greet tonight after Raw at Red Bar in Kansas City, but the event has been canceled because apparently he has COVID-19. The venue, Record Bar, on Facebook wrote, we regret to inform you that the event with Jeff Hardy taking place Monday, July 26th at Record Bar in Kansas City will have to be postponed to a later date. Jeff Hardy just tested positive for COVID-19 this morning and will have to quarantine for the next 2 weeks and will not be participating in any live events for the next 2 weeks. I can guarantee you that this is not probably something WWE would have preferred that this local establishment put out in a Facebook post. I could be wrong, but this is very unlike how WWE would go about revealing a COVID-19 positive test.
But can you blame them? I mean, this is like they've got to like stand up for themselves to a certain extent too. And I'm not going to blame it on Jeff Hardy because, there are breakthrough cases. He could have been vaccinated. I have no idea what his deal is, but they're responsibly reporting what actually happened. And it's okay. Jeff, doesn't this just make last Monday night look even worse by proxy?
So much worse. And Dino here has a comment that is and look, there's nothing funny about COVID-19. Very serious disease. I hope Jeff does very, very well. But yes, it is obviously draws even more scrutiny to the decisions that were made with Cross last week, where Jeff, they can't even pay, even if they wanted to have Jeff come out and have Cross just destroy him tonight on Raw to get his heat back or whatever. They can't do that, man.
Jeff Hardy literally came back after months off to beat the NXT champion. And then it's going to feel like because most fans aren't going to know that he has COVID. He's out of action for that reason. And then he's like, deuces, y'all, I'm out for a couple of weeks. And so Cross just looks like a giant fool. And the NXT championship looks even worse by default. So yeah, man, that's just some bad luck. That's some real bad luck.
Dude, yeah. Cross just got to say, man, what is going on right now? What is in the water in WWE?
Well, that's the thing about it. And I know you want to build storylines over time, but this could have been an injury, right? Jeff Hardy could have tweaked his ankle last week and not been on TV for weeks. That's why you've got to be so precious when you have somebody hot like Cross. You don't do something short-sighted because you run the risk of this exact thing happening.
Dude. Well, a lot of people have been wondering where Randy Orton is. Fightful saying Orton has been on the disabled inactive list while away from WWE Raw TV. No word yet on why WWE has Orton on the disabled inactive list, but there's no issues between he and the company. It was noted that there's hope from all sides that Orton will be back in time for next Monday's Raw right here in Chicago from the Allstate Arena. So I hope that is the case as well, and that Orton as well. I'm glad to hear this is a short timeline, though, that he's expected back,
Dude was lit on fire earlier this year. Come on, y'all. He had literally an Inferno match. He was lit on fire. Give him a break. No, I think it's strange that he's not been on TV. It must be like listen, these guys get tweaked, injured all the time. They're probably protecting him a little bit. I'm going to guess that he had a shoulder thing maybe. I don't know. Who knows what it is, right? But give him a few weeks to heal up. Let's bring him back in August because I imagine they're going to want him. This SummerSlam show is a big freaking deal to WWE right now. You're going to want all your big players on there, and Randy Orton is definitely one of those.
And lastly here, WWE talk before we go off into the races into a bunch of AEW conversations about CM Punk and Daniel Bryan, so stick around. But PW Insider saying Canyon Ceman is gone from WWE. He had been working as WWE's Senior Vice President of Talent Development. It was rumored in late June that Ceman was released then, but those reports were incorrect. He was let go on Friday, and during his time with the company, Ceman was intricately involved in the scouting, recruiting, and evaluating of talent for the WWE developmental system. He helped oversee the NXT brand. He was hired in March of 2012 as the chief financial officer after serving as the chief financial officer of the Association of Volleyball Professionals until that organization closed in 2010. WWE initially hired Ceman as the senior director of talent relations. He was later promoted to senior vice president of talent development in 2015. And I was surprised by this. I know that Canyon Ceman had a lot to do with the developmental process over the last decade.
Well, especially as seems like they've been leaning more into trying to capture like collegiate athletes or Olympic athletes, guys that are coming out of that arena and wanting to figure out what do I do once I get past that kind of amateurism in terms of where they land. Not that they're amateurs, but they're, that I'm not a professional sports player yet. Where do I go after college and all that stuff? So this guy's perfect. He's done world championships. He's been on those same circuits. And I think it's interesting, but it also does feel like they're starting to shift their business strategy a little bit and how they bring talent in and what they see as that developmental pipeline. So we'd only be speculating to figure out why this happened, but I do believe, look at the releases, look at the way NXT has been kind of recertified as the developmental platform, all of that stuff. It's probably just some corporate restructuring.
Yeah. And by the way, I see there's a real hot conversation going on, respectful, by the way, about the pros and cons of getting vaccinated in the comments section right now in regards to the Jeff Hardy story. Just to be clear, you can get vaccinated and still get COVID-19. There's like several reports of that. This is not a 100% effectiveness. I might have to get a booster shot here soon, right? But if you have the vaccine, much lower chance of getting the disease or having it be something that's going to hospitalize you. So still very worth getting. We don't know if Jeff got it or not. That's not anything I wanted to speculate on, but just to kind of clarify what everybody's discussing there, that's the long and the short of the vaccine thing at the moment. Am I missing anything, Michael?
Nope, you're exactly right. So good call out there. And also, I like Headlock Heel here in the chat, bringing up the Orton conversation. Orton's been going hard during this pandemic. I think it was a great call out, Headlock. Orton doesn't have an injury. He's just banged up and resting to go hard in the coming months. He's already been going 100 the last year and a half. And it's true. Like, these guys live out there on the road. We take this for granted. If you go work out and do a gym routine long enough, you're going to have aches and pains and small tears that you got to work through. And I think it's always great when these guys get a chance to hopefully get a little chance to rest up, So,
all right, let's get to some big buzzy news here from AEW. So several wrestling fans on social media have pointed out that Living Color is now following AEW on both Twitter and Instagram. Now, while this doesn't necessarily confirm anything, could be another sign that CM Punk is bound for AEW. Living Color's Cult of Personality was Punk's entrance theme song in both WWE and UFC. I will note that there was some news that broke this morning because of Cassidy about Tony and the EVPs being in Chicago this past weekend at the United Center. Cassidy tells us everything that he knows about that here in the interview just a little bit. But it does look like CM Punk is AEW bound, Michael. That's the bottom line right now.
Dude, I cannot be more excited about this potential news. And all the rumors have been there for a long time, but it seems like it's finally feeling a little more concrete, right? Like, they're actually moving forward on this. Chicago is the place it needs to happen. If you can look over my shoulder for those in the video feed, this right here, yes, there's a Miz action figure. Right behind that is the CM Punk Elite action figure, the Nexus shirt, right? The kind of that last iteration. So I'm a big Punk fan. I think he did a lot for the business in the early 2010s whenever fans that were kind of disinterested felt like, oh, there's something real and raw happening here. So I think it's great. And I've said for a while, AEW is chock full of great talent, but what does it take to really move the needle from a more casual fan? It is CM Punk and Daniel Bryan. I mean, you've brought in some legends. Don't get me wrong. Christian Cage was a big get. That gets attention. Mark Henry, right? Maybe not a full-time wrestler, but Punk and Daniel Bryan, that brings guys over, or fans over, that typically only stick with the big E to come watch your product.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I mean, him and Bryan, big deals. That's for sure. We have here from Dave in Living Color just got that bag from Tony K of money there. Yeah. Eric Clark, CM Punk. It's big news. I don't want to talk too much. We could get more back into Punk and Daniel Bryan in the mailbag. I did feel like pointing that out. But again, we're about to get a huge deep dive from Cassidy in the audio section. And again, half an hour from now, go over to the Wrestling Inc. YouTube channel. If you're watching us live, you can see my conversation with Cassidy all about all the news he's broken kind of coming out of those two stories.
Can I just add one thing to that too, Nick? You talk about this big story, big debut potential. You mentioned Living Color. You mentioned the song here, right? Cult of Personality. This is the advantage of Punk having a song that is not owned or licensed by WWE. How many times in AEW have we seen somebody show up and that music hits and the audience is like, hey, what's going on? And it takes them a second to register what it is. And then the pop happens. The second that opening, the crowd goes apeshit. Like, that's the power of having a licensed track that is not owned by a fellow wrestling company, because you get that immediate pop and it will just blow the roof off.
All right. We'll talk more Punk and Bryan here at the end of the show. Stick around. We got a couple minutes. We'll be right back to it. Dr. Britt Baker, she attended Friday's Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship event in Tampa to watch the Paige Van Zant versus Rachel Ostovich fight. She posted a photo with Van Zant and revealed that she suffered a broken right wrist during her match with Nyla Rose. She also said she's not going to take any time off. Dave Meltzer reporting it happened during a Death Valley driver. So update there on Britt, and I'm guessing more time of Britt walking around in a cast talking trash to everybody.
Good thing for her. She is super talented on the mic, and I think, injuries happening to people who are strong. I mean, The Miz has been injured for months. Great on the mic. She's going to be able to roll with this and keep her momentum going. No worries there. Glad it's not a more serious injury.
And after a brutal and bloody match on Dynamite, Lance Archer, the new IWGP US champion, was scheduled to face a Big Kaz XL at Saturday's SWE Fury event in Lubbock. Archer announced he was going to be sitting out the event to heal up. hope he's well. I would still love to see him in Kaz XL. I had no idea that match was happening. That sounds insane. But yeah, real beat up. Not a huge shock, I guess, Michael.
Dude, he does brutal matches. This dude puts his all into everything. Lance Archer is just a phenomenal talent. But this against Kaz XL, I think about Kaz XL and what he's been doing to redevelop himself coming in back into this promotion. So I hate that they didn't get to have this match. I hope they do get to have it. But matches like this, brutal as they are, we're going to get there someday. It's going to be a great match. It'll be awesome. More importantly, though, Archer's got a lot of heavy lifting to do for AEW potentially in the coming months. So again, get healed up like Randy Orton. We got to save these guys sometimes.
Yeah, Cappy 508. Lance Archer is a stud. I agree with that. All right, lastly here, before we get to Cassidy Haynes, if you are listening to us in audio form, and again, about a half hour from now, you can find that over on the Wrestling YouTube channel, and we will dive in the mailbag in just a moment, talk all things Daniel Bryan, AEW, and you can jump in the comment section as well about that. But huge news, Michael, to wrap up the news segment. The producers of The Simpsons want WWE legend The Rock in a guest starring role. This, according to Carolyn Omni, one of the writers. She appeared at Comic-Con at Home 2021, and she revealed that the makers of The Simpsons have conceived a potential storyline involving The Rock and Lisa Simpson. And I'm just surprised it hasn't happened yet. That was my takeaway. What's your thought?
I think it's great. I mean, I'm with you, Nick. He's not already been on The Simpsons in the last 15 years, right? As big as he is. I do have one kind of side thought about this, though, which is growing up, right? And like as a product of, born in the 80s, product of the 90s, when people like The Rock made guest stars on shows, SNL, whatever else, it felt like a really big freaking deal because you didn't often get to see them outside of the main product, which at the time was WWE or WWF. So I think this is cool, and it feels like a hallmark of every big celebrity to be on The Simpsons. But in 2021, seeing guest stars on The Simpsons does not feel like as big of a deal as it did back in the day, I will say. Unfortunately, I think it's still a huge get for The Simpsons and a huge deal for The Rock, who's promoting his new movie. But to be the Debbie Downer in the room, that's not the same litmus test that it was maybe 20 years ago, Yeah. It's a bigger deal for The Simpsons, I feel like, than it is for The Rock, personally. But
yeah, for sure. It would definitely pump some blood into The Simpsons right now. It wouldn't take that much of The Rock's time, an afternoon in a VO session. There's a lot you could do there. I mean, for sure. But Daniel Price here, I guess, saying, Hausman, you forgot one very important piece of news. The wrestling team that won Celebrity Family Feud last night, and it's not on my run sheet, and I will bring it up because I did watch it, and it was awesome. And congratulations to Team David Arquette and his Forbidden Family. Not sure if you caught it. Fantastic television.
Did not catch this, did not know about it at all. Who were they competing against?
They were against Team Paul Rubens, which included WWE Hall of Famer Drew Carey. Of all the wrestlers on that stage, Drew was the only one to ever compete in a Royal Rumble. Didn't come up, unfortunately, on the show, but what a little bit of trivia. All right.
He was up against a former world champion and David Arquette, Nick. What do you do, right? What do you do?
All right, Michael. Well, this is going to bring us to the mailbag. Thank you, Cassie, for taking the time to chat with me. Again, if you're watching us in video form, we're about 25 minutes away. You can go watch that conversation I had with Cassie over on our YouTube channel. But let's get to it here. At Wink Daily over on Twitter, that's where today's poll question came from. The poll question I ask you all, who do you want to see Daniel Bryan feud with in AEW? Now, this all spun out of reporting from Cassidy saying, and this is the latest on what's going on here, by the way, where he says AEW's internal talks on bringing Bryan back began in May after his WWE contract expired and he lost the career versus title match to Universal Champion Roman Reigns during the April 30th Smackdown. While AEW started discussing a run for Bryan at the time, there were no contract talks or negotiations happening, as it was said to be purely conjecture. Now, the actual talks and negotiations between AEW and Bryan did not begin until sometime over the last few weeks, and there's still no word on how long Bryan is signed for or how much the contract is worth, but it's believed that he's locked in and signed. Not the same for Punk, as I talked about with Cassidy, where we're not really sure what he signed for. But again, Tony and these EVPs were just in Chicago over the weekend at the United Center. Punk has been Punk teased that Michael Jordan song Serious, right, which they play before or at the halftime game for the Bulls. Something makes me feel Punk was maybe feeling a little nostalgic, knowing he was going to maybe be heading to the United Center to maybe film something for AEW, and decided to put that tease out on Instagram. where's your head at here when you think about these two guys being AEW bound?
I said it early in the show today, Nick. I think that these are the two guys that finally move the needle and push AEW into the next level. They've been doing a great job, right? They've been bringing up their own talent. But how do you kind of have that crossover appeal that you need to really go head to head with the WWE of the world? And I don't think you can just sign WWE talent to do it. It's got to be real needle movers. The passion around Punk has been there for years, right. And there is a desire to see him back in the ring. We've not seen him in, 8 years now, right? There's some pent up demand that fans will tune in for. Similarly with Daniel Bryan or Bryan Danielson, people have wanted to see him outside of that WWE umbrella. He's been there for 15 years almost, right? Like they want to see him go have some of those dream matches somewhere else. And AEW is going to give us that and deliver on that. So I think it's a huge deal in a way that not a lot of people move the needle. But I think, happening in Chicago, Punk debuting there, the buzz that this is going to create, it's going to be insane. Now, does that mean it's going to change the wrestling industry forever? Maybe not. But I have a lot of confidence that AEW is going to be able to use these guys the right way and just potential future matchups. It's just going to be great for weeks, months.
Yeah, Braddock here saying it's not about head to head. It's about which show is better. And true to an extent, because this Friday or this Thursday at 4:00 Central, 5 Eastern, WWE is going to be doing its quarterly media call, looking at Q2 profits, right? Or yeah, they do Q2. Yeah, it's the end of Q2. All right. Anyway, I'll be on the call. We're going to play the full audio for you on Friday, just as a heads up. But I fully anticipate the call, which Vince will be on, maybe Steph, Nick Khan, to say, how do you feel about your competition, AEW, rumored or reportedly signing big name talents that are not going to be re-signing with WWE? Some kind of variation of that question I anticipate coming up on that call, which puts them head to head when the people with money are saying, why is this happening over here and not with you, McDonald's? Why is Burger King doing this when you're not? That kind of deal.
But it's easy for WWE to answer that question right now because they just brought back John Cena, who was a huge movie star. The #1 movie of the summer in Fast and the Furious, Suicide Squad, potential TV show. They're able to say, okay, we lost some talent, but we have brought in a major movie star back. We're talking about bringing in some other huge stars in the future. Now, to me, as a wrestling fan, week in, week out, not an investor, I see how CM Punk, Daniel Bryan add value week to week because they're probably going to show up and do a little bit more and be involved past a month. But to investors, John Cena is the big name they come. I mean, to me, Nick, this feels a lot like when Hall and Nash jumped ship and Hogan jumped ship, it turned the tide. And I think Punk and Bryan have that potential.
Dude. All right. Peter Conklin threw it out there. I threw it out to Cassidy as well. And he kind of no-sold me. Like he didn't want to comment because he doesn't know creative. But Peter Conklin said Bryan and Punk going to come in as a stable. You mentioned Hall and Nash. Look, if Punk comes out, walks through the crowd during Evil Uno versus Serpentico, right? And I'm just throwing that out there. No disrespect to either man. And you see him walk down Scott Hall style, grabs a mic, gets in the ring. You know who I am. You don't know why I'm here. Next week, I won't be alone, right? And you start to build this idea of some kind of camaraderie. I'm all for it. I actually think it would play really, really well. I don't know who your Hogan is that you could pit with them or if you even need something like that, but I'm all about these two guys coming in week after week, having some kind of relationship. With that said, Punk getting to do his kind of Michael Jordan thing over at the United Center makes me feel like he's got his thing, sure. Right? Sure. Cassidy brings up Daniel's desire to work in New Japan. That was a big part of his deal. I kind of see him with Lance Archer here come the Arthur Ashe Stadium show to put him, with a New Japan title, opens him up to doing more with both companies. I realistically don't see it, but as a fan, I kind of would love to see these guys kind of do something like that,
I think it could be cool, right? And you bring them in as a stable or whatever else. It has some potential, right? I think, though, we're talking about this from a creative standpoint. Let's talk about back of house and what's happening in the locker room. And Punk is maybe the guy that I don't think this applies to quite as much. Bryan Daniel. Let's bring him in here. He was just in the WWE locker room. He was just connected with all these guys that are a big deal. You're going to have Moxley over there. You're going to have Bryan Danielson over there. this opens up the pipeline for more talents to jump ship. I'm not saying Roman Reigns is going to jump from WWE because he's got a sweet gig there right now. But in the future, you're telling me my buddy Mox is there, who I wrestled some great matches with. Bryan Danielson's over there.
Yeah.
There's a potential that bigger stars could leap because that door has been opened, right? I think we cannot understate how Bryan Danielson just changes the game in perception from locker room perspective.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Let me actually pull up this poll question here. So who do you guys want to see him feud with? About 600 votes in the last hour. 56.7 Kenny Omega. This is Daniel Bryan, by the way. 30.7 CM Punk. 4.4. Only 4.4 want to see Daniel Bryan feud with Lance Archer. I'm a little disappointed in that number. 8.2 somebody else. Who do you want to see Daniel Bryan feud with if he comes to AEW here soon?
I saw the question before I saw the poll, and my mind immediately jumped to Lance Archer. And I'll tell you why, Nick.
Yeah, me too.
People are drawn to the big names on this list. I get it. Omega, Punk, whatever else. Bryan brings out the best in an opponent that he fights, right? And I think you look at guys like Cena in the past, right? You look at some of these bigger dudes, his matches with Roman Reigns, when people had their criticism about Roman Reigns. And Lance Archer's already a beast. So you put Lance Archer, Bryan Danielson, or Daniel Bryan in the same ring, you're going to have a freaking awesome match. And I just think that's where all my money is right now. It's just, I would dig that.
Yeah, I would absolutely dig it as well. And I kind of like the idea of, I was thinking about with Daniel Bryan coming to AEW, he had such great chemistry with Eric Rowan. And Rowan got such an amazing pop when he came back for that Brody special. And there was like nothing that ever came of it. If you were looking for, because you got Jake Roberts and Lance Archer's corner and everything, and somebody just to kind of, everybody's better in stables than AEW, I guess, right? Like Daniel Bryan walking around with his buddy Eric Rowan, who there's already kind of a familiarity there, and they kind of make sense. I kind of dig that. Like it was just something that popped into my head when I was thinking about him working with a big man like Lance Archer.
Could be big, man. I like that, and I think, we're all drawn to the big matches, but this would still be huge. I mean, it would still be a big deal. It would still be a big deal. Anyway.
At the Buscat, Ricky Starks would be great. We have 6 Rings 9880. 12 months of Bryan versus Luther. Please, finally. No knock on Luther, but no. At the Buscat, Pentagon Jr. No doubt, banger, hot fire, him and Pentagon. At Benny Alini, I think the obvious choice is Kenny, but I'd rather see Ricky Starks feud with Bryan. We also have at J Lubis 1125 Darby, but Bryan as a heel. I think we can write out that Bryan or Punk are going to come in as heels. I don't believe either will be coming in as heels.
I think you could turn Punk pretty easily if you wanted to, but the crowd reaction is going to be what's going to be, which is going to be just super excited.
We also have here at Nerf Herder 26 Tommy End, Malachi Black. Mm-hmm. A little different environment for those two. See how they mix. Could be about that. At Russell Yaffe ETC, the King Nick Gage. I just no knock on Gage. Maybe not the match me, Bree, or Birdie want Daniel to be having right now. I think they have another child as well now.
Can we just say that Daniel Bryan coming back to AEW to wrestle in death matches would be the greatest troll job of all time? Oh, we're going to get our pure wrestler back. No. This dude's going into some death matches with Mox and Omega and Gage. Man, I would love that.
Well, they're both going to be feuding with Cody when they come in.
That's it.
Like, Cody will open the show feuding with Daniel, and he will close the show feuding with Punk, right? So,
is that a little? What was that? A little criticism? What was that?
And look, I'm just saying it's a fact, right? You're a big hot name. You come in, you work with Cody first, then you kind of figure out your way after that. That's just kind of been a trend.
That's true.
All right, let's see. We have a bunch of write-ins here. Joe Arnold, Danielson versus Guevara, absolutely would be hot fire. A bunch of people, I'll just say Hushburger, great name. CM Punk MJF, man, is I think arguably the best foil Daniel Bryan ever had in WWE was The Miz. And MJF gives me hard, young Miz vibes. That came off really wrong.
But that's the quote of the episode. If we had episode titles, MJF gives me hard, young Miz vibes.
I I'm sorry, everyone. But I just see a little bit of the Miz and MJF, and I could see MJF and Daniel Bryan working really well together, and Daniel Bryan being able to help tell MJF how to tell that story and work a big program like that.
Yep.
I'm about it. I think him and MJF would be a lot of fun.
Do we get many write-ins for Darby Allin? I haven't seen anybody mention Allin, and I think that matchup, story with being what it is, that matchup would be fantastic.
Well, we had a couple write-ins on Twitter. I read the one where they were like, Daniel Bryan would have to be a heel to make it work. What's the story you think for Darby Allin and Daniel Bryan?
I just feel like Allin has this kind of mystique persona about him, and Daniel Bryan's very clean cut. Right, Daniel Bryan, and you could do something like this with Malachi Black. Don't get me wrong, but I think Darby Allin's a more interesting dude because he's just the fans like him. And I think you've got to pair Allin with more guys who can kind of elevate him. Right, he's a huge name, but beating a legend like Daniel Bryan is kind of like this comeuppance moment. Like, don't let him get the first win. Right, Darby Allin doesn't get that first win. He's got to fight for it. And then he comes back and he trains and does whatever else. Like, it's not a Hulkamania style program, but it's Darby Allin going back to his roots and fighting just that inner darkness to beat Bryan. I think it'd be really cool.
Yeah, for sure. And Eric's saying Darby versus CM Punk, and like Punk working with a lot of the young talent is going to be really. And Daniel Bryan has, I think you hit the nail on the head. Real hard edged, pure wrestler vibe right now. But Punk is like a little more playful. Yes. And I know in real life it's kind of flipped, like in their real lives, but like in the ring, Punk is a pretty playful dude. And I see him leaning into all the Orange Cassidy bits and stuff. I think he's going to absolutely get it. I think he'll gel well with the Jungle Boy. I think he would work with an MJF as well. I think Punk and Darby is very interesting, just because of like they're obviously both kind of counterculture figures, but Darby's a little more morose than CM Punk is. So I don't know if Punk like kind of makes fun of him a little bit. I don't know. Just saying, throwing it out there.
It's cool. Oh, and you have Sting in the background as whoever you bring the storyline together with. You could put Sting in there as kind of a foil in the background. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Dave Langer, Punk versus Hangman. Punk could go after Hangman's drinking. And hey, you know what, Dave? There's one thing in pro wrestling that consistently draws money. It is when you dwell on the drinking habits of your opponent. Historically, always very good creatively and financially, great path to go down.
You're always the heel whenever you. The one thing we did not talk at all about in this, which is, I just want to bring this up as one final point here.
Okay.
Women's wrestling. And not that the spouse has to go where the spouse goes, right? But we've talked a lot about the women's division in the last year and a half, and it's doing some good work now. I think they've kind of found a groove for themselves. But Brie Bella, AJ Lee.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those are big names for that division.
I talked to Cassidy about Brie, and he was like, well, I've heard what everybody else has heard, that the Bellas are like free from the Total Bellas thing and Total Divas. But then Christy on Friday was like, I don't see it. The Bellas have multiple endeavors that WWE has interest in. I think they've got like a piece of Birdie Bee or something. So she's less convinced. But AJ Lee, and I haven't talked a lot about it, and I have thought about it. I don't know why I don't bring it up, but man, she does not have any ties to WWE. And, you know, her and Britt Baker, there's money on the table. And I think they probably know it. And I would not be shocked if her name has not come up in conversations about returning.
You're building this division around Britt Baker right now, right? That's what you're kind of doing in AEW. AJ Lee is still relatively young for a wrestler. She's what, 34? She's like my age, right? Yeah. She could go in there, and she is that other missing piece, I think, of that kind of legendary status, that big name that immediately adds credibility to that division. Lots of great talent. She elevates it immediately, and you have plenty of runway. Keep her around for a few years to continue to build around her and Britt Baker. But I love it. I love it.
All right, everybody. Well, that's going to wrap us up here for today. I'll be back tomorrow. I'll be joined by EJ Cameron. We are actually going to play part 2 of my conversation with Arya Daivari. I know I promoted it for today, but then the Cassidy stuff came up, and that's very, very topical. So we went ahead and led with that. But tomorrow, come on back. You're going to get to hear Arya Daivari talk about what it's like to walk out in the middle of a ring in Saudi Arabia, waving the Iranian flag and trying to get heat like you're at some bingo hall down in Alabama, right? It just is a story you need to hear. It is one of my favorite things that I put on audio tape I don't know. What is this?
Yes. Audio tape. Records. We send out records if you subscribe to our podcast subscription service. We will give you some turntables and some records.
Yes, listen to Wink daily via vinyl, Monday through Friday, 8 weeks after it first aired because it takes a while to print and deliver. So me, Aria, EJ tomorrow. If you like the Wrestling Inc. Daily, support WrestlingInc.com. We're on all the socials and, of course, the Wrestling Inc. podcast live at night after the big shows. Works just like this with the comment section, just different people, and you can subscribe to that over on your favorite podcast platform as well, as you can with the Daily. And if you want to support us, leave a nice comment or rating over on our iTunes page. We have certainly seen more listeners and viewers come to the table here in the last, I think we've been doing this like 6 weeks or so, live in video form, and it seems to be catching on. So if you want to support it, share out the link, leave a nice comment. All that stuff is great. We'd love to bring new people to the conversation every single day, as long as you are respectful and not trash. Michael, what do you want to plug, promote, put over here before we wrap up today?
I'll just add that if you want to send all of your young, hard Miz tweets my way, I am on Twitter at The Real Wiseman.
Young, hard Miz tweets, right? Young, hard Miz vibes. That's what we got. I'm Nick _Hausman over on Twitter. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I will talk to you tomorrow. And remember, if you winked,